Desiree, how are you, dear?
I'm good. Hello.
So here we are with the Smith School of Enterprise and Environment at Oxford for the Sustainable Finance Summit. You're going to be on a couple of panels,
Yeah.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Warhol said people got 15 minutes of fame. These people are much more generous. They've given us 20 minutes, which, for us isn't really all that long. So I guess we'll just have to do our general chit-chat and catch up over dinner tonight.
Okay.
But we're going to go to the bear first and have a pint. So we might as well just jump into it, right? Because we want to educate the audience. Where I'd like to start and really how you and I first met. You're the famous DWS whistleblower. You basically won on that one.
25-year career, and this 8-month stint totally overshadows everything.
That changed your life as the whistleblower. So kind of give us the short version of where things stand. I mean, the way I think about it is it's Desiree 1, DWS 0. It's maybe Desiree 3 or 4 and DWS still 0. Like, where does that all stand right now? Because it was a shocking scandal.
Yes. It was a little over a year ago where the investigations into greenwashing, both civil and criminal, culminated in a police raid at Deutsche Bank's headquarters and at DWS's headquarters. Right after that, it more or less eviscerated the C-suite. CEO left, COO, CIO, global head of communications, global head of HR, global head of research. So there's now a new team in place.
You took out a bunch of guys. Yes, Desiree. Go you.
Oh, and of course, the president of Deutsche Bank, the chairman of DWS, also got ousted.
Oh, him too. I missed that.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
Yeah. So, it does definitely is serving as a cautionary tale. Now, there are many investigations that are still ongoing. There's been one guilty verdict by the Department of Justice against Deutsche Bank, but the 6 other investigations the verdicts are still pending.
Yeah, well, kind of the process moves slowly in the legal and the regulatory sphere. So, I mean, we'll see what happens to DWS and Deutsche Bank. You know my view on Deutsche Bank, but, this is for a, PG audience, so we won't get into that. More generally, I mean, there's this whole question of fund labeling, what people are calling funds, the Save the Climate Fund with a bunch of fangs and stuff. FCA is working on fund labeling. The SEC is doing stuff. I mean, do you think we've made any significant progress in terms of how these funds are constructed, how they're marketed? Do people know what they're buying or not?
I think we've made progress. I think Europe confused matters a lot. I think SFDR, this classification system that Europe launched in 2021, was well intended. But at the end of the day, it just confused the market further. I do think that the handful of enforcement actions against companies such as Bank of New York, Goldman Sachs, and DWS, I think has done more to clear out a lot of bad practice in the market than all of the regulatory
stuff trying to do
exactly. So I think today that, most people working in sustainable finance got the memo. Don't greenwash, don't exaggerate, don't misrepresent, don't mislead. To the point that, we're now starting to talk about green hushing, right? But I still think that we're in a much better position today that folks understand with every statement you make, you have to back it up with verifiable data and evidence. And so I think there's a lot less rhetoric and grandstanding and posturing. So I think in that regard, there's clearer disclosure. We're in a better place today.
So let me ask you one thing. So we could go down the rabbit hole with SFDR, Article 8 and Article 9, but we're not going to do that. I think there's a simple distinction that I've been writing about with Professor Joe Fish at Penn Law School. And I think this is a lot of the kind of issue underlying the culture wars, which we'll get to, between value-based and values-based investing, which is a fairly simple idea. And values-based, you're kind of screening on things and people can invest in values. There's a fund called MAGA, your Republican values, your Catholic values, there's liberal funds. To what extent do you think the funds that are being marketed out there are clear on whether or not they're a values-based fund and you can invest your values according to whatever they are, And there's disclosures that, you may not match market returns because you're giving up some diversification versus kind of value-based, where even if it's saying this is a diversity fund or a climate fund, there's a thesis as to why this fund is going to at least meet the market or beat the market. How much clarity do you see in that in terms of the funds being marketed?
Yeah, there's still tremendous conflation in the market. There's still so much confusion. Again, we're in a bit of a better place because there's less grandstanding about products, and folks do know that ESG or sustainability largely sits in these two camps. One is about risk management, resilience planning, adaptation, and the other, of course, bucket is about impact, and that's where investors are investing values aligned. We still need to do a better job. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But people today are far more cautious about misrepresenting their products. There is certainly more demand than supply for impact-based or values-aligned products.
So do you want more of those?
Oh, absolutely.
Right there.
Absolutely. But, of course, today, when it comes to impact and impact measurement, right, we still have a huge gap, in data needs and standardizing impact measurement. So there's still, a lot more progress that we need to do on that front.
I mean, you bring them in, like this is a bunch of accountants sitting out here, so they know about measurement. I don't know if they know about sustainability measurement, they know about financial measurement stuff. That's why we're doing this, to get them excited and learn about sustainability measurement. Big issue with SFDR was it kind of came out before the CSRD, had basically the disclosures from the companies. How much difference do you think the work of ISSB and FRAG and, the SEC's got its climate disclosure with GRI? Because ultimately the investors need data being reported by companies so they can kind of make their portfolio decisions and construct them. How much difference do you think having standards for sustainability reporting will make to fund like?
Oh, it'll make a huge difference. I don't know why Europe acted and first came out with a taxonomy and classification system, because I think you're absolutely right. The starting point is standardizing corporate sustainability disclosure. So I think, again, ISSB, coming out with their guidelines, and the market was well prepared, for the guidelines that were just published. There's some time for companies to adopt them, but I think that is the starting point, right? That's the only way you're going to be able to compare, apples to apples. And I think, again, Europe is very well intentioned, but this whole argument around should it be just about financial material disclosure, or should it be both about financial material disclosure and impact, the European argument. Unfortunately, we're not ready for that yet. I think that the starting point is to nail down single materiality, ISSB, let's have regulators back it, and in the future address double materiality. And anyway, it's voluntary. Companies can still report out.
I mean, and you've got the GRI and they're doing good work. I mean, we're not going to get into the complication of ISSB and FRAG and SEC and GRI. But I do think the work of the ISSB focused on sort of single financial materiality is important. There's the haters, but it's like, if I can't have double materiality, I don't want to have anything. But, that's always going to be the case in life. And we'll kind of have to see how all of this stuff sorts out. When, kind of your dramatic moment came at DWS, ESG investing was, kind of hot and pretty cool. And it was before the culture wars ramped up in the United States. And now all these Republicans saying these funds underperform. And there's funds flow coming out and we don't like ESG and nobody's going to do ESG. You're an American, but you're like watching across the pond in London. What do you think about these ESG culture wars, and what do you think this means for investing in company behavior?
Look, there are real political divides, but I kind of ignore a lot of the rhetoric. There's no doubt that in the U.S. you have fractured regulation state by state when it comes to investing, ESG investing. That said, I kind of just, ignore that, push that aside, and just look at the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. And there, again, you're seeing equal uptake of folks applying for these subsidies under the Inflation Reduction Act. $400 billion has been mobilized. And that might lead to over $1.5 trillion investing into clean energy and clean technology. And again, there's no political divide on that. Money is green, both in red and blue states. So I think that, superficially, America seems very divided. But, the one thing that I tell folks outside is that there's more unity than folks actually realize. Because again, the Inflation Reduction Act, it's, there are a lot of problems around it, but it's been hugely successful.
So maybe you've been living in London too long, Desiree, and you've kind of missed some facts. Let me ask you a couple of questions. How many Republicans voted for the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act?
I don't know.
Okay, the answer is zero. Zero. Okay, just put that in the back of your mind, when you're talking to folks. I don't want you to look ignorant to your fellow American citizens over cocktail parties when we're talking about the IRA. Let me ask you another question. What percentage of the IRA money is going to red states?
I don't know.
80%. So, and it really supports your thesis, right? So you've got the political theater level. No Republican wants to vote for this. And, where 80% of that money is going is to red states. I think Georgia and Texas are 1 and 2, maybe in reverse order compared to California. You've got the Republican governor of Georgia, going full speed ahead. You've got some weird stuff going on in Texas. And then you have the irony of Europe complaining about the United States not doing much about climate change. So we passed the Inflation Reduction Act and they say, well, this is unfair. You're subsidizing your industries and blah, 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 blah. But, again, you're always going to get this sort of caterwauling. How do you see these culture wars playing out? We've got an election coming up. A lot of people are running for office. ESG.
I think it's just about politics. That's it. I think there is they're just words that they're being thrown, and there's somehow we've weaponized the term ESG and the term woke. But in reality, again, there's more unity in the United States. At the end of the day, both red and blue states want more jobs. They want to bring back manufacturing. They understand that a transition economy are job opportunities. I mean, America is still all about innovation. I look at this similar. I read Chip War recently. And once again, you've got, who funded Silicon Valley? It was Department of Defense, right? So there's nothing different here. Again, it's government led. While voluntary actions, right, can follow, we need government leading the transition of our economy, and then the capital markets will follow suit. And I think that's what's happening right now. I think it's always about, right, if we want to align with the Paris Agreement, it's all carrot and stick, right? The stick is clamping down and tackling greenwashing. We need effective regulation around disclosure, and then carrots, again, bring on more, subsequent, and let's add on to the Inflation Reduction Act.
So you're taking kind of a free market approach. I have to say, just as an aside on ESG, I'm a lot older than you are. So I've been writing about and studying ESG when you were probably in grammar school and you didn't even know what it was. And who would have thought this thing ESG that nobody understood or cared about except for this, little circle could become so popular. And then things become woke. So look, I was a hippie. I live in Massachusetts. I have a beard. Do you think I'm woke? I'm trying to decide what woke is. What's woke?
I don't know. You're asking me all these questions. I don't know.
I need to know if I'm woke.
I know you're cool. You're cool.
That's good. I'm cool, maybe not woke. So you've got the Inflation Reduction Act. You've got a lot of Republicans. You know about my GOP outreach campaign. It's been fascinating. A lot of common ground around materiality. A lot of Republicans doing very interesting things about climate change. Have a different approach than Europe does, where it's, kind of more regulatory. And then you've got this GFANZ thing, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, where, the thesis behind that is that by mobilizing capital in the financial sector, banks, asset managers, asset owners, insurance companies, that's the way to kind of, in a sense, force the energy transition. What's your take on that theory of change on GFANZ?
I think it was a failure. I think it possibly will go down as history and one of the biggest greenwashing stories ever. It was very misleading for GFANZ to come out to say that $132 trillion, had been captured in this membership in this network. that was going to lead the transition. Yes, there is $132 trillion of assets or market cap, whatever you want to describe, but that money was not solely being mobilized for the transition, right? So, all GFANS it was an expression, it was aspirational expression from a number of financial institutions to say, yeah, we should be doing more when it comes to climate action. But little has been done, right? We've got, I think, the most impact we made is that there's awareness, right? There is awareness. And I think we've mobilized, around understanding that we need standardized corporate sustainability reporting, right? So that's like great progress. But the next step is, we need government action. That's the only way. We need the government to give us the guardrails. So then the capital markets can then actually channel that money into real innovation to transition.
And I think that's right. This narrative that, the public sector is failing, so the private sector's got to pick it up. I mean, I just think there's some basic flaws in that. But it's interesting because, in my kind of woke lefty crowd, if I just say maybe got a few questions about GFANS, it's like I'm challenging Holy Scripture or something, and you've got sort of ideologies on both sides. And it's like, how do you get people with recognize that climate change is an important issue, on the left and the right, that have different approaches, just want to work together to address the problem rather than call each other names?
Well, I think that this is the one thing that we need to do a better job in is just communication and language. I think we should stop using the term ESG. I think it served its purpose, and now it's very polarizing.
Had a good run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had a good run.
I mean, look, like I've said this once before, after Michael Milken went to jail, there was a lot of change in the credit markets, and junk bonds were renamed high yield, and LBO was renamed private equity. Now, of course, right, in the aftermath of you guys going to prison, of course, standards of practice was raised, right? There were an awful lot of enforcement actions. But the markets themselves, private equity and high yield stayed. They were just renamed. And I think when it comes to ESG and bringing back your point before about value and values, right? We need to do a better job about this. Let's not lump it all together. If we're talking about, ESG integration, I think that's just regular way of risk management.
Yeah, it's just regular investing.
Absolutely. Right. And that whole thing can go away. And then when it comes to values, strategies around that, just say what you mean. Are you creating an investment product?
Transparent.
Yeah.
Desiree, when I look, our 20 minutes of fame is going to end pretty soon. So before we go, I mean, we'll have plenty of time to catch. We're going to have a pint at the Bear, my favorite pub in the world, from 1242. Any pub that's been around since 1242, it deserves my patronage. It deserves all of your patronage. What are you up to? What are your plans? What's going on?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm talking a lot. I have 2 panels the next couple of days. But I've been working a lot with standard setters and with regulators. And recently I've joined a startup called Attain. And it's so cool. And I thought, more has to be done from within corporations. And so Attain is an educational technology company that just identified that corporate training really is broken. There's an awful lot of content out there, but we learn best when we practice it. So that's what Attain does. It actually simulates
real. Can you do that for companies and investors?
Yes.
At Attain?
Yes.
So that's great because, we've talked before about how do you take the things that you learn from your experience at DWS and the speeches that you're giving, but you want to scale it up.
Yeah.
You need to scale it up to the system level. And I think through Attain, it sounds like we've got a good opportunity to do so. So we've got, how many? I can't even see this thing. Well, we've got 5 minutes left.
Loads of time.
We can natter on about whatever we want to talk about. I've told you I've started flipping tires, right?
I know. What are you up to?
I'll show you some videos tonight. Well, it's not like getting the tires heavier. It's just like how many times I can flip the tire. Now I have my own tire. We'll get into that later. So this is a bunch of academics, and there's some practitioners out there as well. What research would be useful? When you talk to companies and you talk to investors and you've got the culture wars and you've got the need for regulation, what kind of research could academics be doing that would be kind of useful for practice?
It's a good question. I would say that we need to do more on the impact measurement side. That would be useful. But I think right now, continuing to look at, but I think that's largely, it's a crowded space and look at, performance of funds. But yeah, I would say, more work on standardizing impact measurement, whether that is, again, on the social front, or on the environmental front. But at the end of the day, one point to make is that while strategies are largely around the environment and on the social side, I believe that we need more focus on governance. I think that often that's at the end of the day is often what has led to a lot of the problems. Is just institutions going wild on producing lots of investment products, but yet forgetting to hold themselves up to the best standards when it comes to corporate governance.
And where do we fix that governance on both the company side and the investor side?
It's active shareholding, and I think we need to shake out boards. We need more qualified boards. There's no doubt about that. So that's largely what Attain does. So we're training folks from entry level through to board level. I don't think a lot of boards have deep understanding on the topic of sustainable finance or sustainability, and that needs to change. There was way too much gaslighting and fudging and, promotion, and boards need to ask the real questions. It needs to be pared down. There's been too much terminology used, too much jargon and acronyms. And again, simply put, boards need to be more astute and ask the right questions and ensure that the board itself is upskilled to handle this. This is monumental change. This is core business adaptation. That's what sustainability is.
And is that something that Attain could work on?
Yes.
With boards of directors?
Yes.
Be target for you?
Yes.
So, I don't know what's happening here, Desiree, but, like our video thing disappeared. Something about I'm looking at the nebula, on this computer here, like from the Webb telescope. So I think we're probably out of time. I don't know. But listen, it's great to see you. And I really do appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah, can't wait.
And we're going to have a pint and
Yes.
we're going to have dinner tonight.
Lovely.
All right. Good luck on your panel tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.